have to find time for illness. So the topic of today is sports and recreation, and we'll be talking about trends in sports. So sorry, here's some technical problems as usual. Okay, so as I already said, we'll be talking about sports and recreation. So now we'll take a look at my PowerPoint. Okay, so well, this is the topic of today. As you can see, there's someone in the fitness or in the gym, and someone who is jogging. Okay, so here you can see the quotation once again. I think this is really crucial to understand that it's very important to exercise, because otherwise it will be painful when you're older. Okay, so first, before we start, I would like you guys to brainstorm the recent sport trends which you noticed around you. Let's say the last 10 to 15 years, or this year, or the last 5 years. So try to brainstorm some trends and post it in our comments, please. So you'll have about 30 seconds. Okay, so do we have any comments?
Yes, we have some comments.
Yeah? Really?
Yeah, someone asked us how we feel today.
How we feel today? Well, I'm feeling fine. I'm just a little bit tired, but I'm fine. Thank you. How are you? It's very nice. How are you feeling, Sophia?
Thanks, I'm also feeling fine.
Sophia is also feeling fine, so very nice of you. Okay, so, but has anyone written something concerning the topic?
No, not yet.
Okay, so the first thing, or the first trend we'll be looking at is parkour. So I think it's something that emerged already like 10 years ago. So I remember when I was about 10 years old that people were already practicing this kind of sport. So with parkour you don't really need any equipment. So basically the streets, walls, the roads, buildings are your sports equipment. And I think there are also some very interesting videos on YouTube to watch, because it looks really, really dangerous. But nevertheless, I think those people are very gifted, but also they exercise a lot in order to be able to do those things. So to jump from off of a building which is, I don't know, 6 meters high or even higher. So I think this is very impressive, and this is maybe also a sport you could talk about in your exam. So parkour, as you probably know, so you can also, of course, write your own definition into our chat. But as you can see here, it's about...
He's also fine. Or she's also fine.
Yeah. Okay, that's nice if you're also fine. So parkour is about traversing environmental obstacles, such as I already mentioned, walls, buildings, streets, I don't know, rocks and everything else, maybe rivers or bridges. And you do that by running, climbing, or leaping rapidly, and efficiently. So basically, it's all about trying to be as gentle as possible to your own body. So it's really like a fluent movement. You're not really, if you jump, you don't really try to crush your knees, but you try to roll over your shoulder, probably. So that's basically the definition of parkour. What I also found out is that it was founded by Georges Herbert. So he's a Frenchman, and he kind of realized that in 1902 there was a volcanic eruption, and he wanted to evacuate these people. And he found out that, or he saw by observing these people, that they weren't able to jump over simple obstacles, and it was a slow movement they practiced, or they were moving very slowly. So he thought that, okay, I think it's very important that people not only train or exercise their brain, but also their body. So it should be in a balance. And so he took interest into to the topic of how to move over obstacles which are in your way in your everyday life, and then he kind of founded parkour. So the description he used when talking about parkour or describing parkour is, of course, in French, and he said that être fort pour être utile, and this means basically to be strong in order to be useful. So in parkour, it's not about that you have a lot of strength, but that you know how to move, that you know how to reach a certain goal. So it's not about showing off your muscles. It's really about bless you.
Thank you. Sorry.
It's really about flexibility and knowing how to react in a certain situation. Or, for example, if you have to run away from somebody, I think you have a big advantage if you know how to do some parkour. So that's quite nice. So this is, of course, a trend in sports, I would say. And as I already mentioned, it already emerged, let's say, my opinion, it really emerged 15 to 10 years ago. And I think you can still see people practicing in groups, for example, and they try to climb over a wall, for example. And I think you see that quite often all around, especially in Austria. I think it's quite popular, especially amongst teenagers or the youth, but also it's 20 to 30 years old. And as I already mentioned before, it's a way to improve your mind, but also your fitness. So it's not just about strength, I think. Okay, so this was now parkour. Now we'll take a look into hiking. I think this is something which was always prevalent, or not always, but which has always been prevalent the last 60 or 70 years, especially in Austria, as we have a lot of mountains, and I think it's very beautiful to hike there. And I also think that the youth nowadays, or teenagers, seem to be interested, and it kind of seems like it's becoming a trend again, especially in summer, because it's also, as parkour, it's not only about being fit, which is also a very important factor, but it's also about getting some stress relief, trying to free your mind from your thoughts, or being in connection with nature. So on the one hand, you have the physical advantage of hiking, and on the other hand, it's a mental advantage. So or psychological advantage. So you try to free your mind. And it's also, I think hiking is also something which you can do in groups, which is kind of team building, because everybody has to watch out for each other and you try to help each other, and you really have to take care of the others around you. And for me personally, the most important factor is that hiking really kind of connects you with nature, and it helps you to calm down and to come back to the ground again, if you know what I'm aiming at here. And what is also really cool is the panorama, so the countryside, for example, if you go hiking, and of course you take some pictures, and it's just really, really great. Maybe for a new profile picture on Facebook. This is an option, of course. Of course, if you have any questions or comments.
Actually, we have a question.
Yeah, nice.
But it's not related to the topic.
Yeah, just.
Do you like pizza?
If I like pizza, yes. Who doesn't like pizza? Pizza. I don't know. Do you like pizza? Sorry. But I think it's quite nice to have a conversation with somebody. Someone responds. But you could also maybe respond to our topic of today. So you could just write into the comments whether you, or which ones of the sports I already mentioned you prefer, and which not so much, and why not. So you could do that. That would be also nice. But of course, random questions is also fine. Okay, where was I? Sorry. What is also really nice when you go for a hike is that the forests in Austria are really beautiful, and there are a lot of clear rivers and lakes, which is also kind of a factor which connects you with the nature. And also maybe you'll see some animals, which are also very nice. And I think in Austria you can basically hike nearly everywhere all around the mountains. So, and I also think it's kind of a trend, because although it has been in Austria a long time, it still is a very prominent sport amongst Austrians, I'd say. Okay, I'll just give you a second to think about that and maybe write your opinion. What do you prefer? Do you prefer parkour or hiking? And why not? I'll just give you 25 seconds to think about that. Und? Habe ich was geschrieben? Verzögerung? Wieso?
Ein paar Sekunden ist verzögert.
Ah, okay. Ah, ja, stehen kann. Okay. So, the next sport I'll be talking about is skiing. So it's kind of similar because it has been around in Austria for a long time. And I think it's a very popular sport amongst Austrians, especially if you live, for example, in Tyrol or in Salzburg. It's very common amongst people to go skiing, but also in Upper Austria, I think. And I think in general, or I'm of the opinion that skiing is, although it has become quite expensive, it still is very popular amongst students especially, but also amongst families which plan their vacation maybe in a skiing resort. I also wrote down, for example, you can go skiing which you can also tell in your exam, of course. If you have any examples, that would be nice. Or you can also talk about your own experience, for example. In Kitzbühel, St. Anton, Saalbach-Hinterklemm, but also Hinterstora in Upper Austria, or Arlberg in Vorarlberg, I think. Do you know any other ski resorts or where you can go skiing? Schladming? Can you think of it?
Yeah, Stuberger Gletscher.
Stuberger Gletscher, very beautiful there. Axam Litzum, so I think, yeah. So also in Innsbruck you have so many possibilities to go skiing, and it's both for professionals and also for amateurs, which means that it's basically for everyone. And there are also a lot of courses for children. And I think when talking about sports and recreation or sports and trends, I think skiing in Austria has to be in the list, at least at the top, in the top 5 or something, because it's still, I think, very prominent. Okay, so I have a question for you now. What do you think of skiing? Is it something that is already dying out, kind of, because it's so expensive, or is it still popular amongst younger people, elderly people, or families? So, and another question, you yourself, do you like skiing? Or, of course, if you talk about skiing, you also have to talk about snowboarding, or we have a question.
If we were able to speak German.
Obviously, it's an English stream, so I will only give difficult words or the translation in German. So I'm sorry for you. But we also have a German stream, of course, here at the Matura Express. So you could watch that one. My God.
Okay.
Yeah? Question?
Yeah, I think our fan or the one who comments is from Germany, because he wrote, "Are you able to speak German? Even in Austria, I hate it."
What
I
does
think
he?
he hates the Austrian German. That's what he wanted to say.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So what I wanted to say is that you also need to talk about snowboarding, of course, which is well, the same prices, of course, if you go snowboarding. So you could also talk about that. Do you prefer skiing or snowboarding, and why not? Okay, so I'll just give you 25 seconds to think about that, and maybe to post something in our comments. Okay, so hopefully you found out some ideas, or you can talk about it with someone else maybe. Okay, so now the next sport is cycling. So basically riding a bike. Here I would like to talk about a peculiarity. Excuse me. I just want to say excuse me. I think it's e-biking. E-biking is definitely one of the latest trends when it comes to sports and recreation, because I think in the last, let's say, 5 to 7 years, just my personal opinion, don't get me on that, I think it has become very popular because I think that riding in an e-bike is very popular amongst elderly people, but now also amongst younger or people or families, because it's very, very practical for if you want to drive to work, for example, and you want to stay fit nevertheless. I think it's a very, very good compromise with by going to work by bike or by e-bike, because oftentimes the distance between your home and your workplace is, let's say, with the car about 30 minutes, let's say, and with the bike it would be 1.5 hours or 2 hours. And with the e-bike, I think it's very helpful, especially if you want to go uphill somewhere. It really helps you, and it's, of course, if you don't know yet, sorry, I didn't give you an explanation. It's about a bike which is powered by an engine. So it's not like a was habe ich vergessen? Was hast du ein Motorrad? Motorcycle. Sorry, I forgot about that. So you still have to put some effort in yourself, but it supports you. For example, if you go uphill. So I think that is something a factor which kept a lot of people from taking the bike to get to work. But this now, I think it really facilitates transport or the movement from home to your workplace. So I think it's actually I think it's quite good, a good invention, because on the one hand you have to do something yourself, but still you're supported if you go. If you have to drive longer distances, for example. You can go cycling or e-biking basically everywhere you want to go in Austria. I've seen a lot of people going up the Nordkette, so you can even go up the mountain, but you can also go to the Neusiedlersee in Burgenland and just ride along the riverside or along the lakeside. So you have a lot of options, and I think that also e-biking has become a trend amongst Austrians. So this is also why I wanted to mention that here. Okay, so now I have a question for you. What do you prefer? Do you prefer riding a normal bicycle, so without any kind of engine, or do you prefer e-biking, and why not? So I'll give you around 25 seconds. Do we have any comments?
No, not yet.
Okay, so let's go on with golfing. So golfing is also something that has been around for at least, let's say, 30, 40 years in Austria here. And I think it's, I tried it once and I think it's a very cool sport. So you have to also practice a lot, as it is with all the other kinds of sports too. So, which is also very interesting is that in Austria we have 140 golf courses, and there also exists a Golf Alpine Pass, which allows you golfing at exclusive prices on 33 golf courses in Tirol, Vorarlberg, Salzburg, and Carinthia, so which is Canton. And I think that although golfing is quite interesting, and I think it can be a lot of fun too, I think it's very expensive. So in my opinion, golfing is it's a sport for people who are affluent, so those who have money, because I'm not sure about the prices, but it's not cheap if you compare it to something else, for example. So, but anyway, I think it's very interesting also to if you train or enough in order to compete in tournaments or competitions. And I think that when it comes to golfing, it is kind of a trend, but it's not really like exploding, like for example parkour, because it's so expensive. I would say that, but nevertheless I would consider it as a trend. Okay, so what do you think about golfing? Have you ever tried it before? Would you like to try it? Why not? So I'll give you about maybe 30 to 45 seconds to think about that. Ich bin jetzt noch nicht gleich fertig. Okay, and the last trend we will be looking at is water sports. So as the quality of lakes and rivers is very good, really excellent in Austria, people also like to do a lot of water sports. So I myself, I have never tried that before, but I think, for example, water skiing would be something really funny in it. And if you're interested, there are also some really funny videos of people water skiing on YouTube, for example, so you could look that up. In Austria, people usually do water sports in lakes or in rivers. So, but yeah, basically we don't, there's no other option, I think. But also, of course, swimming in a swimming pool, so that would be another option. Then we also have windsurfing, rafting, or canoeing. I'm not really sure. Do you have an explanation for rafting? Because right now I don't have anything in my head how that could look like. So if you have a definition, or if you did it before, or if you have ever practiced it before, then you could just write it in the comments, or of course if you did anything else of those other options. What I think has also become a trend in the last 10 to 15 years is wakeboarding. So it's kind of very similar to water skiing. So I think you hold on to a leash and you get drawn, for example, in circles around in a lake, and you also are able to jump over obstacles. So it's also looks very funny, I think. Okay, so that was it. I would like to just sum it up for you today. So I think sports are there for many different reasons. So on the one hand, we have the physical aspect, so where you want to keep yourself fit. Then we have the psychological aspect, where you want to maybe relieve yourself from stress, or try to clear your head, try to become calmer. And I think the third main point of why people do sports a lot is that it's a kind of social activity. So you need to consider, when talking about sports, that it's not just only competition, but there are also a lot of team sports, which is, I think, very important also amongst people, in order to have someone to identify with in the sports group you belong to, and you belong to a team. And I think there's through sports, the community is can become very close. So it's something, I think, that even though, for example, at the Olympics people compete against each other, it still brings all the nations together. So it doesn't really matter if you're from, I don't know, South Africa, China, or Canada, or wherever, or France, for example. So you're not seen as a nation or as a person from a different nation, but as a competitor, as an equal competitor. Oh, thank you. So I think that sports, or doing sport, is very, very important. So, okay, so I hope you have a good overview of all these trends I was talking about. Of course, there are many different trends in Austria, of course. So if you have anything you would like to mention, just write in the comments, or something we haven't covered yet. And well, thank you for your attention, and I wish you a nice Christmas break, of course, and happy holidays, happy New Year, because we will see each other next year then. Okay, thanks, bye.